Hello, everybody. My name is Harrison. Come on in, close that door, and let's talk. Today's question is going to tackle a rather uncomfortable subject, so this episode might be a little more serious than usual. No funny jokes. Maybe just one. Or two. No promises. Anyways, today's episode is going to talk about self-harm, and for those going through it. I've seen a lot of sources online, like YouTube and articles, saying that the only person that can help you stop self-harm is you. While this is true, this doesn't help at all. Why mention the issue but not provide a solution? Thanks for giving me a nail but not a hammer. Today's question is, how can I stop the act of self-harm? People from all ages can experience self-harm, and by all ages, unfortunately, that includes children as well. Self-harm is a topic a lot of people don't like discussing about, even those experiencing it themselves. But today we will take a deep dive at understanding why we do it and how we can put an end to it, which will hopefully make it more comfortable to talk about after this episode. A lot of people assume that others harming themselves like to do it for attention, to receive sympathy and love. Number one rule for addressing issues like this is to not assume. You can do more harm than help by misunderstanding their behaviors and their motive behind self-harm. A low majority of people doing self-harm will do it for attention, which is a different matter to discuss, probably on a different episode. Most people that self-harm tend to hide it away from people, because they don't want to feel judged or outed for doing such things. However, on that note, a message I have for anyone that is going through self-harm is that you're not alone, and I will provide methods to help you overcome self-harm. Atomic Habits is a book I've been reading recently, by James Clear. This guy really loves to talk about just habits. This guy yaps about the topic so much that it gives me a headache. So much talking, I wonder how you can write a 320-page book about just habits. Watch, I'm gonna come out with a 400-page book writing about the topic of sleeping. Beat that, James Clear. The reason I mention this book is because by the definition of a habit, self-harm is a habit, and the book tackles ways to stop bad habits. A lot of solutions mentioned are inspired by the book. The reason habits develop is because there's something that initiates it. And if we do said habit, we are given something in return. That's the reason people eat when their stomach rumbles. You decide to grab a quick snack. You feel your phone buzz, you check to see who texted you. You do these things because you are rewarded for it. You get to see who the text is from, you get to eat something and fill your stomach. Now I know what you're thinking, Harrison, that's obvious. Like, all of us do that. But a lot of times we don't even notice it happening. It happens subconsciously. Like I mentioned in my previous episode about procrastination, the brain loves being rewarded, even if it's something that is bad for us. Self-harm is a habit. The reason we do anything is because something initiates it. The rumble in our stomachs is the initiation to eat. A sound, feeling, or thought is the initiative. A very common initiative for self-harm is stress, worry, shame. In response, people commit self-harm. And in return, we get to feel relief. We get to be distracted from the issue. People that smoke cigarettes are also going through a very similar situation, and we get very upset once we see the effects of our habit. Self-harm doesn't have to be your outlet for emotions. Your body doesn't deserve this. And you might be asking, okay, so what? What am I supposed to do instead? I'm glad you asked, because I have a lot in store for you. I want to first tackle the root of the issue in hand. A lot of great resources like mind.org mention a lot of distractions that you can do to keep your mind off of self-harm. However, distractions only help during the situation, not overall. If you believe distractions are better for your situation, go ahead and check it out. Again, it's called mind.org. I believe first we should accept the fact that we did self-harm, and that we are willing to change for the better. Putting ourselves in that mindset will help progress our process of healing. By listening to this episode, you're accepting the fact that you don't want this, and you want to overcome it. I am very honored that you chose my podcast, and hopefully I don't disappoint. Okay, enough stalling. Let's get to ways to solve self-harm. One way to prevent the act of self-harm is to make it hard to access such materials that cause harm. Make sharp objects a chore to get to. Let's say your room is upstairs. Leave any of your sharp objects all the way downstairs. If you know your razor's in your room, you can literally feel where it's at. You know it's easy to get to and ready to use right away. But if it's stored away from you, you're less likely tempted to do it. So in shorter words, store them far away from where you usually are / commit self-harm. This will help break the habit of self-harm and encourage to cope in a different way wherever you are. The only issue with this is not everyone uses the same method of self-harm. So let's come up with a different solution. Another way to prevent self-harm is to get away from the environment that encourages self-harm. Having a room is a safe haven. It's your own little paradise of things you like, but it creates the perfect opportunity to do anything you want behind a closed door. I personally have friends that have gone through self-harm, and the chances they get to do it is when they're alone. A room, a bathroom, a car, these are all environments where we are isolated by ourselves, and gives us the perfect opportunity to do self-harm. So what do? It's good to have some alone time. I'm not saying don't ever be alone in your room, but when such feelings begin to devour you, the best thing you can do is put yourself in a public environment. Surround yourself by friends or family when such feelings occur. Go outside at your front porch, but you won't be as motivated to do it. Developing the habit of going outside your private space is a very good thing. And again, I want to state that you shouldn't have alone time ever. It's great to be alone. I love being alone. I'm so lonely. But as soon as those feelings pop up, it's best to leave them in the room until they fade away. The same thing goes for people struggling with porn addiction. The harder you make it to self-harm, the easier you'll let go of it. Another method you can do is identify what causes your thoughts of self-harm. As I stated before, some things initiate the act of self-harm. If you're super stressed, overwhelmed, angry, if you can identify what causes these feelings, it should be best to avoid it entirely or find a different way to cope with the issue. For example, let's say work is causing these feelings. What can you do differently at work to help avoid these feelings? Could you possibly work in a different position or find another job entirely? Another scenario is maybe a person is making you feel this way. Could you address them about it? Or is it possible to just cut them off entirely? Better yet, what can you do to deal with these feelings appropriately? Maybe something as simple as deep breaths can help alleviate how you feel about something. I encourage you to try it out. Now, I need to keep reiterating this, but there's never one solution to many problems out there. We are all our own person, with all our own problems. I mentioned a lot of logical solutions to help stop self-harm, but sometimes some people are looking for more sympathetic help. I have many people I know who self-harm, and it upsets me dearly because I only want the best for them. But as someone who is currently not experiencing self-harm, I feel like someone else can provide a better outlet for the feeling. So I invited a friend of mine, who loves to ignore me all the time, onto this episode. Yeah, it definitely doesn't hurt being left on red all the time. Ignore that. She herself was recently battling the same issue, and has some very good key points that should be mentioned.
I'm not sure if I wanted to feel something or to cure boredom. I don't even like pain, but when I unscrewed the pencil sharpener, it felt like my brain was on autopilot, completely unaware that everything about what I did was not only wrong, but also dangerous. I had told myself I would only do it once though. I found myself going back to it a few more times. I still ask myself if it was worth it to keep my mind quiet for a few minutes. And to those who are in the same position, is it worth staying in silence? How can we stop moments of silence where not even ourselves can bother us? I think a lot of times, especially me, it is easy to say that you won't turn to bad coping mechanisms. I see myself above that because there's no way I would ditch all my progress over the years for some unfortunate dopamine. However, that is simply a high ego rather than the ability of admitting human fault. There is no shame in feeling things, nor is there shame in desperately trying to do just that. However, in my experience, there is so much more than finding yourself staring at the kitchen knives and asking yourself if it would fix you. There's always so much more than that. I can't tell you how to cope, but please know it can get better. Even if there's no guarantee, there is hope.
There will always be hope, no matter what you identify as and what you do. I have faith in you, and I know you can overcome this. Fight for as long as you can, and if you find yourself falling behind, straighten up, and fight it even harder this time. And for those who know someone that is struggling with self-harm, don't stay silent. Talk to whoever is going through it and encourage change, but don't force it. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I also hope you guys got something out of it today. I only want the best for you guys. And if this episode didn't help with your situation, I have a great source that you could search up. It's called Crisis Text Line, and text a number local to your location. It's a cool source because you're not actually talking, you're just texting. One more thing to mention, if you'd like to leave a message on my podcast for others to listen to, go ahead and drop a voice recording on my Spotify page. Or you can drop one in my DMs on my Instagram page. That's at Come On In Everybody. I'll make sure to give it a listen. Other than that, I hope you guys have an amazing day. Until next time, everybody, if you need anything, the door's wide open. Come in at any time.